Ladies and gentlemen, Seahawks fans of all ages, welcome back to the 12 Talk podcast. My name's Josh. This is other way. This is Mitch.
What a start.
Every single time, I can't help it. It's just I have no idea which one my camera points. And as you may see as well, we have a special guest host for this episode. We have Bryce Coutts from the HawksZone Rundown. We're going to be talking all about our 37-33 victory against the Browns. We've also got a 53-man roster build that we're going to use. We're going to use the German Seahawkers website. It's an amazing tool. Get on it. I'll show you all the link later. But before we get into that, I think we should probably hit the theme music. Let's go. There you go. Back in it. Still love our theme tune. I can't help it. It's a banger. It's something I would play whilst DJing just to fill in some slots. But let's get the pleasantries out of the way. Mitch, I'll start with you as you're here, bearing with me every single week. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm finally caught up on sleep. I don't know if you realise, Bryce, what time that game started last night, but it was a 3 a.m. kickoff.
Holy cow.
I've already shared a screenshot of my alarm schedule to Josh, which was like 2:30, 2:35, 2:45, 2:50. Basically horrific. Horrific, and just trying to make sure I didn't miss a single snap of last night. Because who would do that, Josh?
You know what? I am laying full blame on Jonas and Pascal, the German Seahawkers that I went to meet in London and had some beers with. It was going so well. I set my alarm on the train back, thought, yeah, I'm going to be awake, not a problem. My alarm went off. I thought, right, I'm in for this. I blinked and it was the second quarter. So you two are covering the first quarter. Bryce, thank you so much for coming on, dude. We love appearing on pods with you. How are you? How was the game? You were there. You were at the game, weren't you?
Yes, I was. It was a lot of fun to be there. I can honestly say the vibes back in the building, like it's been gone for I'd say about 5 years, and there was maybe I'd say 60-70% capacity there, but like there's a point they showed the decibel meter. And it got up to 100, 102. And you're like, there's only 60 or 70% of the building here, but it was loud. Like when third down came along, it got really loud. So it was nice to see the energy being back. And you could see the team feel the energy of the fans being back and like actually being invested in what they were seeing.
It looked, so obviously watched it from TV. We didn't get the privilege of watching it live like you. We will, though. Mitch, next year, me, you, Bryce, and a collection of other people are definitely going to go to a game. It looked, I mean, we'll discuss it later on, but even the Dwayne Estridge touchdown, like how all the players were so hyped up for that. And every time you saw the sideline, seeing the fans, and it even came through on the broadcast. The broadcast we had Mike Bennett. What a guy. Can we please have him on every single Seahawks game? And we had Mike Robb as well, and it was just it was brilliant just to see the energy, and the game itself was amazing. We're going to get into that, but before we do, let's just shout out quickly the UK Seahawkers. So Mitch and I paid up members. Bryce, if you want to, it's all there. We are now the official podcast for UK Seahawkers. We're still so thankful for this opportunity. You can join the UK Seahawkers for £12 for an individual membership or £20 for a family membership up to 4. You get access to the social events. We've got a meet up in Glasgow next year. So anyone that's listening or watching knows a good bar in Glasgow, hit us up or hit the UK Seahawkers up because we're still looking for the right place. You get 10% discount at the pro shop. You get chance to win game day field passes. There's so much. We have competitions, we give to charities. It's an amazing organization. I'm so proud to be part of this chapter. And you also get your free goodies every single time you renew. This year we had it was all throwback themed, and it was amazing. We've got the throwback wristbands, we've got the patches, we've got your RFD card and your membership card. And we also want to shout out our friends, the German Seahawkers, because those guys are huge supporters of us. We're going to be using their website for our 53-man roster build today, and it is an amazing tool. If you've not checked it out, I'll put the link on when we start doing it. You can do it by all means as much as you want beforehand. It's €15 to join, or approximately, depending on your currency conversion, £12.68 or $16.06. I got it right that time, Mitch, as well, didn't I? I'm getting good at this. There you go. See, you get access to the tailgate zones. You get 10% discount at the pro shop as well. There's raffles, competitions. Go to their website, translate it to English. Some fantastic articles. And yesterday, as I alluded to, I had the fantastic opportunity of meeting two of the German Seahawkers. Our good friend Jonas, here he is. Look at him, beautiful man, and Pascal, who is their defensive guru. This guy loves defense, so he's going to be coming on the pod as well. Met them in London, had some great beers, and that is what I attribute to me missing the first quarter of yesterday's game. So thanks, guys. And a big shout out to our first sponsor of the pod, Wraith Energy. Mitch, have you got your Wraith bottle? There you go. Mine has been substituted today for rum and ginger beer because I've been at a family barbecue all day, and why not? If you go to their website, you just go to wraithEnergy.com. Anything you want to pick, whether it be the tasters, the main, the big boxes, no, whatever they are, tubs. There you go, which Mitch has got. If you purchase that, anything you purchase, you use the code 12Talk at checkout, you'll get 10% off. Can't say better than that. I used that as soon as I woke up yesterday, just to try and keep me going, and it worked so well. But without further ado, let's get into our pre-season review. Seahawks play the Browns at Lumen Field. A fantastic result. I'm pretty sure Coach Mike wasn't happy with the 33 points we conceded, but the 37 points that we scored was some fantastic football. And in case you weren't aware, we'll go quarter by quarter, and then we're going to start talking about it. So with the first quarter, we scored 7 unanswered. With a beautiful throw from Gino to DK. And then second quarter, 17 points to 13. Third quarter, 10 points to their 7. The fourth quarter, 3 points to their 13. Leading the score 37-33. Gentlemen, Bryce, I'll start with you as our special guest host. How did you feel about that game? Being there, tell us, what was your general feeling about it?
So my general feeling about it is, like I alluded to earlier, the stadium vibes back, the crowd's back into it, the team itself, they are bought in. You can see they're bought into what Mike McDonald's brought. Even the guys that have been through the Pete Carroll era a bit are bought into how they're going to play this year. But the thing was, they didn't play well. Like, they actually got outplayed in a lot of areas by the Browns. The stats will show that as well. But the thing was, it wasn't like past kind of situations with the Seahawks where you feel them getting outplayed and you're just waiting for that onslaught to incur. Like, oh, okay, now they figured out the defense, and now the Browns are going to go up and down the field, and it's going to be, a shit show that way. But honestly, it was very much controlled, but it still needs refinement, is how I would put it. Like, the team's in control, but they need refinement on just capitalizing on everything.
Yeah, I think that when you look at the first half and second half in isolation, whilst the first half wasn't overly polished on defense, there were still busted coverages in there, which had led directly to points for the Browns. And then also there was, I think, 2 occasions in the first half where flags on third downs, when we were about to get off the field, extended drives that resulted in points. So it was a real nearly kind of situation in the first half where we nearly did even better than it looked on defense, but we gave up silly mistakes at bad times, which I don't think will happen quite as much with starters. But then you have to also factor in that the Browns played less starters than we did, so it's not really a valid excuse. But I think some of the busted coverages were from not only players that don't know the system, they were also rookies at NFL level. So that's a big factor. I think from an offensive standpoint, what's really interesting is we finished the first half averaging 9.7 yards a play on offense.
I knew there's going to be a stat in there.
There's going to be a stat, 9.7, and we were also averaging 1.3 points per snap because of how punchy those drives were. The five plays on the first drive, and then we've scored special teams on a return, and then given the ball straight back to them to play. Our offensive snaps versus the amount of points we put up in the first half, which was 24, it was something like 30 snaps, 24 points. So it was mad. It was absolutely mad. It was incredibly efficient whilst we only had the starters on the field for the first drive. So you can only imagine that the offense is going to be slightly more slick going into game week 1 than the defense, is my take.
I agree. I think I still think the defense has got a lot to learn to be what Mike McDonald wants it to be. I think that you could see there was we had quite a few green dot wearers throughout the game, and we alluded to it off air, but we'll get into that later. I think there's still going to be a little bit of adjustment as to where the voices come from, where people need to move to be able to cover some of those, the gaps that were in coverage. But it was encouraging. I mean, I would happily take games where we're putting up 37 points than games where we're putting up 7 and letting in, even if it's like a 2 field goals or a touchdown without an extra point. That shows so much, I don't want to say class, but it's so encouraging to see that we're going out there, we're doing that. And you look at the box score, I mean, touchdown in the first half, 2 touchdowns in the second, touchdown in the third quarter, a touchdown in the second half in preseason, gentlemen. Not seen that, but happy with it. I think it's going to be mid part of this season, and I play a lot of fantasy football. I was this far away from taking the Seahawks defense for one of my fantasy teams, but I thought midway through the half, like halfway of the season, I think we'll start clicking. We'll do really well. I just think the offense, if you've not drafted Geno Smith, I think this might be the season to do it. This is going to be the season where he's going to really start banging the drum on why he deserves that contract.
Nice.
Yeah. I can see Bryce going, Bryce, you are the quarterback coach. I will let you say what you need to, sir.
So this is what I'll say. And this is why I think when we had the Tennessee joint practices, there was the rumbles from Mike Garafolo that Geno's camp had come and contacted John Schneider about an extension, and there were kind of some talks going on. Then Geno made his IG post and everyone freaked out about it. I get why it's in Geno's interest to get the contract extension.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, and from the Seahawks point of view, I see why it's not in their best interest to give one right now. The thing is if you really look at Geno's contract next year, it's really going to come down to how he plays this year and how they rework this, because he's due a lot of money if he hits a lot of these incentives, which I think he will in this offense, more so than he even did in 2022. But if you look at, and I know I'm going to get hate for this, and that's fine, but Sam Howell's had a very, very good preseason. Like, compared to what we saw and heard about him at practice and how he was inaccurate, and all the beat reporters were saying it and how bad he looked, he was still learning an offense that he hadn't necessarily been accustomed to. He's, again, still a young guy. He's only 23 years old. He's learning a third system in his third year. That's not easy to do. And a system, for that matter, that doesn't really have any previous installations throughout the NFL. Ryan Grubb's never coached in the NFL. Scott Huff's never coached in the NFL. Kalen DeBoer has never coached in the NFL. So their concepts have never been really put into the NFL. So he's really kind of coming and learning this firsthand, as is Gino. But Gino has 12 years of experience in the NFL, how to study a playbook and all those kind of things. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the offseason, because if Sam's preseason and the way he's played, and if he practices well throughout the year, it's going to make it a very interesting conversation on how much they extend Gino, if they do, or, and I'm going to throw this out there, if there's a quarterback, because they've got the draft capital now from the trade of Darryl Taylor. I know people don't really understand, but they do get 2 comp picks from Jordan Brooks and Damian Lewis in the 4th and the 5th, roughly speaking. I'm just kind of guesstimating here on their values. You have the ability to go up and get a player if you want one next year and not sell out your entire draft. If there's a quarterback that John Schneider falls in love with, there I think is a potential that you could see a extend Gino or keep him on his contract and trade him situation and get value for a team that maybe doesn't have a quarterback right now, team that's struggling. Like, I'm going to say it out there. What about Cleveland? Think about it. If Deshaun Watson doesn't pan out, you could go and trade for a Geno Smith and bring him in on a decent deal where you're still paying less than Deshaun. And if you have to eat Deshaun's money, you're still saving money by having a guy like Geno, and you give up a 3rd or a 4th round pick potentially for a Geno, or if he plays well.
Isn't Deshaun fully guaranteed though?
He is, but that's what I'm saying. By if you eat it, you might be able to eat it and still
just do a Denver,
money, just like Denver did, and get another guy to come in that can stop gap for a year or 2 on a cheaper deal and save you that. Yes, you're taking a dead cap hit, but you're going to get higher production out of the quarterback position. Kind of balances itself out in that regard. I just think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And that's not me saying I don't want Geno here. I am fully in support. I love Geno. But when you look at how a roster's construction, how a team doesn't look next year, they're looking 5 years out on how this is going to look cap-wise and whatnot. Geno in 5 years, he's 34 now. He'd be pushing 40. So is Geno in those plans in 5 years? That's the thing you have to start. Sam Howell's 23. You can see him potentially being in here for the next 3 years. He's 26 now. And you bring in a rookie guy. That's where I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens.
I think with Howell as well, it's been this offseason has proved that if he is coached correctly in just a little taster for everyone, Bryce and I in the next couple of weeks will be doing just a coaching podcast just before the season, where as a rugby coach to American football coach, we're going to talk about all this. But I think the big thing for this season is obviously proved that good coaching makes players better. Weirdly, who knew? But I think Sam Howell, for all of his faults with Washington last year, he's proved this year with a good O-line, not having to play hero ball or try and win a game every single time, can make the right throws. He does make some bad decisions. He will throw a ball away or overthrow, but that's fine. He's still a young quarterback who could, in a pinch, much like Geno, could become that starter for a year or 2, see how he goes, and then progress from there. And we'll talk about the draft. Obviously, Mitch and I were doing some draft coverage. I say Mitch and I, mainly Mitch, because he is our draft nerd. He loves a bit of a draft prospect, and I'm sure Bryce will happily join in with that. Yeah, there you go. I just think this the Geno conversation is going to be one that will be going on for a while, but you have to weigh up in this offense, if we don't sign into an extension sooner, by the midpoint of the season, we'll be putting up numbers that will command more money than we want to give him, in which point we need to move him away and start afresh. I think Mike McDonald is looking to rebuild this franchise, and he'll want a young quarterback to be able to do that with. I don't think Sam Howell is his quarterback, but he'll do.
I think Howell and Geno can both play Grubb's offense, though. They've both. I mean, we saw with Howell yesterday with the ball to Cody White down the left hand side. Yeah. That was a great throw.
Beautiful.
The throw that wasn't. Yeah, the throw that wasn't that one because of the holding call, but. He's proven that he can make those shots. But he did say at the beginning of this offseason that he was focusing on making better decisions, right? He was trying to make better decisions. And he also commented that not be constantly having to chase games will help him to be able to make the right decision, even if that's throwing it out of play if he's under pressure, or if everything's covered up. Don't try and fit the ball into a gap that's too small. Don't take too many risks. If it's second down, you've got another down to play with. Just play it safe. You saw sometimes he was kind of. This isn't just yesterday. This is all the way through preseason, because we've seen loads of him. It's almost like you can see he's tempted to do something silly, and he checks himself and then and then does something sensible. And actually, if you look at his stats and his completion percentages and his quarterback ratings across all 3 games now, he's actually put quite a good body of work in there. And as I said before, he can make the deep shots. He can connect the dots with the check downs and things like that. He can do all of it. It's the mental side that he needs to just hone a little bit, and that's the bit that Gino does well. So Gino's actually quite a good mentor for him. I know Gino's not exciting, but that's the bit that Howell needs. He's the gunslinger that needs to just be a little bit less, trigger happy.
It's kind of interesting, because if you look at what Ryan Grubb's doing with this offense, and I really got to see it obviously yesterday in person, is he's really kind of gone back to what both Sam Howell and Geno Smith's college roots were at West Virginia, North Carolina. They're operating a spread offense, which is a pro-style spread, but there's enough familiarity with it you can see in the base packages that they're not having to think. And the one throw that actually impressed me the most in that game by Howell was the deep dig route he threw to Aesop Winston Jr. That number 59 got ejected for the hit. But the window Sam put that ball in was something Sam's not doing last year. That ball's either erratic, he's going to throw it to the defender, he's going to miss, but he stuck that in there. And you can see for Sam, there's a lot of, he takes his drop, he gets his back foot in the ground, and that ball's coming out. There's no, is he actually open? He doesn't have to think as much, which I think is beauty of Ryan Grubb's offense in this RPO, even for Geno, is I'm not asking you to think a lot. There's a lot of pre-snap, and then post-snap, this is what it should look like. And here's your 1, 2, 3 concept on it. And there was another throw, I think it was to Helani in the flat for a first down on 3rd.
Yeah, that was a great play.
And Hal sees the blitz coming, he just turns, boom, right to Helani. Helani scoots and gets the first down, and our drive. That was the one thing too, like speaking of this offense with Ryan Grubb, is he's got answers for things. You can't fool him like
so
you
nice
did.
To see, isn't it?
Well, it's just I don't even, there's not a word to describe it, because thinking of and I go back even to Darrell Bevel. Darrell Bevel relied on Russell's legs.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Schottenheimer, in a way, relied on Russell's legs. Shane Waldron didn't get the legs. Then he got Geno, and he couldn't piece together anything except 3 tight end sets, and that was basically his calling card. Ryan Grubb, though, you watch him throughout that game. If you do something that he's not prepared for, he immediately has a counter for it on the next drive. If you're going to bring that pressure again, boom, I've got this, and this is how we're going to catch you in it. And the other thing that's so creative, and I don't know if it gets shown as well on the TV copies as it was from where I was sitting, is the blocking scheme in the run game.
Yeah.
Like having the jet motion one way, with, I can't remember if it was Aesop or Derek Young, and then Laviska Shenault comes back the other way on the kickout block for McIntosh to hit that seam and go. And it was like, we didn't see that with Shane Waldron. We haven't seen that with Darrell Bevel or Brian Schottenheimer. Like, he's got such a creative way of putting defenses in weird and precarious situations where their rules now don't apply to what you're seeing. And you can see how guys get open, and it's just really nice to see in such a change of pace. Like, for once, I feel like Seattle's going to be an innovative offense rather than, hey, we're trying to play catch up with everybody else and just get to bare minimum. We're actually possibly going to be ahead of the curve in some things, where teams are going to start taking things from Seattle and being like, hey, we want to do this. Like, the amount of packages that Ryan Grubb threw out there where you see, I think it was in the opening drive, there was one where Brady Russell lined up outside of DK Metcalf, and DK's in the slot. And it's like you could see the safety in the corner kind of come out, and they're like, okay, how do we play this? Because one of us has to take Russell, and one of us is going to have to, they can't just bracket DK like they did for the last 4 years, where you have a safety in a corner right over top.
I think Brady Russell has been one of the, and we'll probably get onto this with our positives and negatives, but I think he's been one of the stories of this preseason where he's, I won't say come out of obscurity, because didn't we take him from the Raiders practice squad? Eagles practice squad. Oh, sorry, yeah, it was Drake Thomas from the Raiders. But we took him from there. He's been on the practice squad for us. He suited up a couple of times last season, and this season this preseason especially, he showed what he can offer as a smaller tight end. His blocking's been fantastic. His pre-match fits, horrifically good, but on the field, he has that air where you don't know if he's going to be a blocker, if he's going to be a receiver. It really starts defenses questioning where the ball's going to go, what he's going to do. Is he going to be a blocker for, say, DK in the slot, or is he an option to receive the ball? I think it's been brilliant seeing him. It's such a change of pace from what we had. Like you were saying about Waldron last season, I found his offense really vanilla. The packages with the 3 tight ends, it was a revelation, but it wasn't really, because it didn't garner a lot of success. It looked pretty and it looked innovative, but it wasn't productive. Whereas I think having the tight end room we've got now, with the wide receivers, with all the motion, everything that Grubb's throwing into this offense, being able to get players like Russell in space, or DK, as I think in the season will get into more space in various sort of, whether it be a slant or a flat or an out, anything. It's so interesting to see, especially from like us as Seahawks fans, having dealt with mediocre offensive play. I think this is going to be just an interesting season. I'm so excited. I'm so pumped for this.
There's 2 glaring things that neither of you. I've sat here listening to all of your good points. There's 2 glaring things that haven't been addressed here. Grubb's up in the box. Hallelujah. Right. And 2, the personality vacuum that I thought was going to be there in the tight end room when Uncle Will left and Kobe Parkinson. Brady Russell's brilliant. He's just
Brady Russell is that personality now. Yeah,
he absolutely is. Yeah, I thought it was annoying to lose Parkinson and Uncle Will in the same sort of window, because they were both cornerstones. I mean, they were very much relied on because of the old offense. We've alluded to that with the 3 tight end sets, but they were relied on as veterans at that point in that room, and they were big personalities. We used to see it on Between Two Ballors, like the personality and that's another personality we've lost in this group, by the way. But Ballor. So yeah, no, I think it's brilliant that Grubb's up in the box. That was a huge bone of contention with the Seahawks fans last year with Waldron. And 2, I think that from a personality standpoint and a leadership standpoint, there's a bunch of people like Jay Love and Russell that are coming in here and just seem to be just injecting a new sort of personality into this roster, and it's really helped make it feel fresh from coaches all the way through the roster, which is great.
So the one thing. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
No, Bryce, you go first, because mine's going to be a question to the 2 of you. So.
So here's the one thing I'll say about Brady Russell. If you look at what Brady Russell's skill set is and what he's good at, what he brings to the offense, he is Ryan Grubb's NFL version of Jack Westover from UW. He plays the exact same role, which is why, with Jack Westover obviously being injured, I could see a situation where now Brady Russell plays that role for Seattle, and Jack Westover learns how to replay his role at an NFL level from watching Brady Russell in Ryan Grubb's offense, because he does the same stuff that Westover did the last 2 years at UW for that. He's a quick check down guy for the quarterback, whether it's Geno or Sam Howell, which is what Westover was. He was a chain mover for 5-yard to 7-yard throws, gives you a bit of personality, but he'll get his nose dirty and make blocks because people have overlooked him and he has a point to prove. And you watch Brady Russell, when he gets in there and puts his nose in there, like his whole objective is to drive you out of the space that you're in. He doesn't care what it takes. He's just going to get the job done.
It's the way it should be. I've got a huge bugbear about people like, so example, Tyler Lockett, he'll catch the ball and he will hit the deck before taking any contact. And I understand why, because it's longevity. He's trying to prolong his career. You know what? I'm all about that. Absolutely fine. But people like Russell, and for me in a contact sport, I say I'll attribute this to rugby as well. The big thing, when you take contact, your legs don't stop moving. You are constantly driving those legs. You're constantly moving, constantly trying to move the chains, move the sticks. And I think Brady Russell is that small package tight end who you can pass to in the shorts over the middle, where he will take it, he'll hit the contact, but he'll still make 2 or 3 yards, like a running back, and just keep going. The question I was going to ask, I think I'm going to actually leave until our 53-man roster. So anyone that's tuning in, thank you very much. We really, really appreciate it. We are going to go through some positives and negatives of this game very soon. We're going to get to some of your comments. If you've not put a comment in, please, much like Gary, put them in, because Gary is all over this. And Gary, I promise we'll get to yours as soon as we get to that segment. But ask your questions, put your comments in. We'll put them on the screen and we will discuss them happily. This is going to be a longer pod than usual. But I think this needs to go to our positives and negatives section now. And Bryce, as you are our special guest host, I think you should start.
Oh, thank you, Josh.
That's right. So start with your I can guarantee you are going to take one of mine or Mitch's positives, because it's what me and Mitch do every single week, where we go positives and negatives. He'll take one of mine and I'll go, damn. And I've got to think of another one and pivot. Go.
Okay, so positives for this game for Seattle. I think it is the fact, one of them is they clearly show that they can hold their composure even when things may not go the way you want to in the box score, like with the stats and everything. Old Seahawk teams, you show that stat projection of what first downs to this, they would have lost. That score would have been completely flipped, and I don't even think Seattle puts up 33 points. They might have been at 23 points. So you can see the composure all the way down from the coaching staff. Mike McDonald, the way he just commands the sideline is different than Pete. There's celebratory factors, like when D. Eskridge had his punt return, the whole team mobs D. Eskridge, but there is a sense of composure throughout that entire sideline where they don't get too high and they don't get too low throughout the game when things go wrong or things go right. My other positive is, man, the schemes that Mike McDonald and Ryan Grubb have brought to Seattle are completely different than what we've seen in the past. Like, there was the sack Jaron Reed had in the first half there where they lined up. I kid you not. The linebackers were in the A gaps and the safeties were right in behind him. Like, there was nobody in the middle of the field except for Kayvon Wallace by himself, essentially. And the corners were all pressed up. And I was like, are they coming with like everybody? Like, are they bringing a full out blitz here on third down? No. All of a sudden, 3 of those guys drop and they bring this. They shoot Jaron Reed and Leonard Williams into the same gap on the center, and then Jaron Reed just pulls off and the guard collapsed and he has had a free shot at Jameis Winston. And I went, that is something we have not seen in Seattle, where we can simulate a pressure and screw with an O-line and they're blocking assignments and then drop everybody, and people drop to areas and understand why they're dropping there. Not just, oh, cool, I'm going to go cover this green space of grass and I have no idea what could come and couldn't come. It's like, oh, hey, there's a shot that there's going to be an under route. I'm going to sit here instead of dropping the extra 3 yards. I'm just going to sit here and take that away. And so for me, it's just the scheme, the composure of this team. Like, those are my biggest positives I took out of being there. Was at no point did I ever feel in that entire time sitting there like, yeah, Cleveland's going to just go on a run here of like 3 or 4 possessions where they're just going to rack up 10, 13 points on us. It was like, yeah, they got to play. There's a busted coverage, but I think Mike McDonald's got an answer for it coming back on the next play. So those would be my positive takeaways from the game.
Bryce, you've messed with our whole format here. You've done 2 positives, and I want to, Mitch.
I've got a good one. I'm going to do one, and then I'll fire it across. We'll alternate.
Right,
yeah,
excellent.
I was just thinking,
because then you're not going to steal 2 of mine. So I'll be sat here like,
Josh.
The positive was my alarm went off. Oh wait.
All right, fine. Rub it in more.
Sorry, second time I mentioned it. I won't do it again. So I'm going to do it in true Mitch style. I'm going to do a positive combined and backed up with a stat.
Obviously.
Which is going to come at you via Brian Nemhauser. So shout out Brian Nemhauser on X. So my biggest positive from this game and also from all of the preseason games is how consistently we've pressured quarterbacks no matter who is on the field, right? And I'll back this up with Brian Nemhauser's tweet an hour ago where he's put the top 8 pressures per game from players, and of all the players across the entire league, we've got 3 Seahawks in the top 8, including first and third. So in 8th place, Derek Hall has averaged 3 pressures a game. Now the caveat here is that the people deep on the roster and on the depth chart are going to play the majority of snaps. So you're going to see that the top of this are going to be the performing depth guys, right? And then so you've got Derek Hall averaging 3 a game in 8th place. You've got Mike Morris at 4th with 3.5 a game. And then you've got Jamie Sheriff at the top averaging 4 pressures a game. He's had 12 pressures in 3 games. Madness. Absolute madness. And Jamie Sheriff wasn't out there for the full game in any of those. There's been times where Boye Mafe played the whole game. There's been times where Derek Cole's played the majority of the snaps. Mike Morris has been out there for the lion's share, So yeah, whoever we're putting, my positive is the scheme has got us creating pressure no matter who is lined up on that D-line.
I like it. That's good. And as you mentioned, Jamie Sheriff, he's actually my positive as well. To have a undrafted rookie out of South Alabama College who was pretty sure, was he delivering beers before he got the call up?
I don't know, but I love him more for that.
Dude, it was on the the post-game interviews yesterday. And he came up, he just seemed like such a nice guy, just really humble. They were talking about him. And he just said, "Oh yeah, before I actually got the call, I was delivering beers for a company." And he quit his job 2 days before he actually got the call up. He'd been training, he'd been doing all the training all off season, waiting for that call up because his agent said, "I'll get you something." Seattle came. He came on board, and I think he has been one of the unsung heroes of this preseason. I think he's come out of nowhere. No one knew his name. And yesterday, what you're looking at, 4 solo tackles and 2 sacks. Oh, sorry, 3 solo tackles, 1 assisted, 2 sacks. And people still don't know who he is. This is going to be a conversation for our 53-man roster, but I thought it was fantastic. The fact that a player like that with the raw tools who can come into this squad and do what he's done all preseason, I've got a bit of a man crush. I'll be very honest. I think it's been fantastic. I love an underdog story. We're all Seahawks fans. Before the Super Bowl, we were the perennial underdog team. But I think he's been absolutely fantastic. I thought he shot his gaps well. I thought his tackling technique was brilliant. He's my big positive out of this. If he doesn't make this roster, then I will be shocked. But that's my first positive. I'm going to focus on some individuals for mine. Mitch, what's your second one, sir?
My second one's just going to be the comeback kids. I think there's a bunch of rookies that haven't looked brilliant. DJ James being a really good example from last week.
Brilliant.
Not perfect, right? He was not perfect. He had a few busted coverages this week, but the previous week he looked out of his depth in every way. Broken tackles, missed assignments. He did not look NFL ready in any way. This week he was thumping tackles, stopping any kind of gain after receptions. He looked far more sure in the tackle. And there's a number of stories like that. D'Eskridge was another one yesterday who, nobody really expected D'Eskridge to to put in the body of work that he did, and to score a touchdown on a return. And there's all sorts of stuff that just kept popping up yesterday where I thought, oh, well, good for, whether they make it on the roster or not, good for them for turning the tide on, changing the narrative that's been going on through the off season. So that's a positive. It shows character, right? It's resilience and character on those guys.
100%. My second positive is the RB3 battle. There is a slight negative to this as well. After listening to the post-match press conferences, George Halani seems to know that he's not going to make this roster, although I think he should. But that the RB3 battle, and it's been a constant thing throughout the preseason. McIntosh and Halani, I think, have been fantastic. Yesterday, we're looking at the stats. McIntosh, according to the ESPN, had one carry, and that was his 56-yard touchdown. So his average over one is 56 yards. I'll take that. And then Halani, 7 carries, 38 yards, 1 touchdown, and it was 5.8 average. That is fantastic. That's the type of competition you want to garner during the off season. I think that is going to be such a difficult conversation to have with the coaching team as to who they like. Personally, everyone who listens to this knows that I'm a huge fan of McIntosh. I think what he did in Georgia speaks verses. I think Halani coming out of Boise State might be one of those that we try and sneak onto a practice squad, but he may get picked up. But I think that's been such an intriguing thing to see, and seeing them both really do so well yesterday. I was so pleased. I could imagine if, touch wood, doesn't happen, but if Walker and Charbonnet go out and we've got those two as their backups, we could still do everything we wanted to do in Grubb's offense. So that's my second.
Negatives? Should we leave it at 2 each? Well, you mean we usually cover 6? Yeah, 6 between 2 of us.
Let's leave it at 2 each because it's 6 in total. Bryce,
I won't screw up the format this time. I'll give you one right off the bat.
Go
on. My negative, one of them that I noticed is still the offensive line. The inconsistency that's there, especially at the tackle position. Like, we have George Fant. Lucas was there in shorts and a jersey. He was walking, no limp, no brace, no nothing. But I think he's on pup to start this season. I don't see him starting game 1. It was interesting because, and I think I might have put this in the Discord chat, when the second unit first came out after the starters were out, McClendon Curtis was left tackle and Stone Forsyth was right tackle. I seriously don't know, and this may shock people, I don't know if McClendon Curtis makes this roster because he hasn't played much guard in the games. That's been either Haynes, Bradford, Tomlinson. So that kind of makes me wonder if he's not, and I don't know if they're going to keep 4 guards right now off the start, but they had him at left tackle and he got beat like a drum. Stone Forsyth actually did better than he's done in his previous 2 games at right tackle, and I think that's a better spot for him. Yeah. But it's very concerning to me. This offense looks great at times when the starting unit's out there and it's Bradford and it's Tomlinson and it's Cross and it's, Fant. But if we lose one of those guys, especially on the outside, I'm not looking forward to that because I think this offense is so predicated with what Ryan Grubb wants to do and taking these shots as we saw on that opening drive that if we lose somebody, it could be a really long season on offense.
I completely agree what you said, but I will also say I think Mike Jarrell, pronounce it how you will, we need to ask him. I think every single game he's played has played some fantastic.
100%.
Especially as a moving tackle. As soon as he gets asked to go outside and step away from his standard assignment, I think he's been brilliant. And Mitch has said this previously with his Historically, what was it, Mitch? He's got historically the
record. His relative athletic score is in like the top 0.5 to 1% of tackles that made it into the NFL through the draft system.
Yeah, there is so much potential there, and I understand that if he came in, it would be a trial by fire. It's throwing him straight in at the deep end, but I'm excited to see his progression, and obviously we'll get into this when we do our 53-man roster build. But I think he's in there. I think the Grubb's probably going to look at him as such a dynamic tackle that he will go, he needs to be here. I need to coach him up, especially with Scott Huff. I think he's going to be there. But I completely agree with what you say, Bryce. I think the depth at tackle is a worry, and it has been for the last few years as well. Because Stone Forsyth, I think he's managed to play. And again, we'll get into this in our roster build, possibly play his way out of that 53, especially at left tackle. He is not the guy at left tackle. He's always looked better at right. But I think they need a swing tackle. That's not just George Fant to be able to cover that. So we don't like negatives on this pod. We try and stay as positive as possible, but we're realistic. So I agree with
we've
that.
got to cover it. We've got to cover it when we're chopping up the game anyways. You've got to talk about a negative at least. My negative is going to be, this is going to be the most obvious thing to mention, but I'm going to get it out there. We all expected to see busted coverages and missed assignments and these sort of things when we got into the main season, into game week 1, probably till game week 7 or 8. We're going to see plenty of them. But they were so obvious yesterday, and the ill discipline and scruffiness that created those penalty flags and the busted coverages that gave up quite a lot of points. They were solely they were big chunk plays, a lot of them, the scoring plays or leading up to scoring plays. They are absolutely there for everyone to see, as we expected them to be, learning this very different system. So they're absolutely going to be a factor. The first sort of 4 or 5 games, I think, unavoidable. And I don't think you can necessarily blame some of the players for them because they're being asked to do counterintuitive things. And some of these systems, like the way they're trained in college to do something in Mike Mack's system is just like, forget that. What you're going to do is you're going to look like you're going to do this, and then post snap you're going to do that. And it's just like muscle memory they have to ignore, and they have to fight against it. So difficult. It is right there to see, and it's going to be a problem.
My first one, and I think it's the first time in the preseason, Mitch, I've mentioned this. There were some blown tackles that really infuriated me. Just easy hits that should have been a shoulder wrap, but people managed to squeeze through, especially some of the running plays from the Browns, from their sort of third string running backs that managed to make yards that they shouldn't have done, where people were just trying to dive in or just arm tackle, which, let's face it, if you've ever played a contact sport, you can't just try and fling an arm out and hope to tackle someone. It doesn't work that way. The body, the shoulder needs to go in there. There needs to be the right levers, there needs to be the right leverage to actually project into someone and through them. I think there was a few of them, but it happened more in the second half, which is understandable with these backup players, these third players who may not make the squad or become practice squad players. But it's still a worry for me because injuries happen in the NFL. It's a contact sport. If we get to the point where some of our starters go down, we're up to second string, but then there's going to be that rotation between second string and people that have been brought in through the practice squad or those backups. I don't want to see what we saw last season with even Quandre Diggs, where he just had no aggression behind his tackle. And it was a negative for me, purely because I bloody love tackling. It's my bag, but that was my biggest negative. But it was, again, second half, first quarter, first half, I think we did really well, apart from some of the blown coverages. But that tackling in the second half, some of them really, really annoyed me.
Who's next? Bryce, you want to go with your second?
Yeah, I'll go with my second. So my second coming out of this game is the 2 injuries, especially Chena's. Like people got up, he walked off. It was not a walk of confidence of like, oh yeah, it's just a Charlie horse or something. He ended up on the bench with ice on his knee, and then he ended up in the locker room, which I don't know if a lot of people showed or the TV copy showed, but he literally went in the blue tent, came out, they wrapped a massive bag of ice on it and walked him into the locker room. And I don't recall him coming back out. I'm concerned that he has a blown knee of some sort or damage that's going to potentially make him miss this season, which
like an MCL injury. As someone who has an MCL injury, that's you're not playing for at least a season.
And the thing that bugs me the most about it was such a dirty play. There was no need for it. Like that's the type of stuff in which aggravates me so much when you're playing a preseason game and a guy like Teller, or I think it was Teller, goes and does an illegal chop block. Like that is, you want to talk about the guy they ejected for the illegal hit to the head. That should be another ejectable play. If you are going out of your way when a guy is already engaged with the running back to then chop at his leg and take out his leg, that's an ejectable offense in my book. The thing that concerns me though is he got up, he walked, and then he went back down on a knee. And that to me is what was the more concerning sign out of that was like, if it's a Charlie horse, you can walk, you can kind of hobble yourself to the sideline. The fact that he got up and then went back down, they had to bring out the trainers and then get him off the field that way. That to me is what was so concerning seeing Chenna, because if we lose Chenna and we've now traded away Darrell Taylor, and I know everyone had their gripes with Darrell Taylor not being able to fit in the run game, but he did bring something in the pass. You may be needing to look for an edge rusher now to fill that. And I know Jamie Sheriff had a really great preseason, but like you were just talking about, Josh, that is a steep drop off to now Boy Mafe, Derek Hall, Draymond Jones, maybe Mike Morris, but none of them have the get off that Chenna does, really. So that was my other negative from this game.
I agree. I think if Chenna goes out, though, I think Derek Hall is primed to take that spot, because he has got an elite get off from the snap. He just the way he moves as soon as that ball is snapped, I think he's primed for a long NFL career. Chenna will be a huge loss. If it's an MCL, it's going to take a lot of recovery, rehab. It's not one of those where you go, you ice it, you rest it, it's fine. It's you ice it, you rest it, you rehab it over and over again. But it's one of those repetitive injuries to the point where I did mine 2 years ago and I'm still wearing a knee brace now. You know, granted, I'm not an elite athlete. I've not got the muscles that they have, but that is a worry. I'd hope that we'd have someone that could jump into that spot. But we saw last season, as soon as Chenna went out, Marfe's production dipped massively. And I don't want to have to rely on, as much as I love Derek Hall, I don't want to rely on Derek Hall and Marfe to be those guys. But yeah, I agree with that. That is and Artie Burns as well, as a senior member of the squad, a veteran, going out, and Mike Mack was quite flippant or secretive about what he knew about them. So we still don't know how severe it is for either of them, unless something's dropped that I've not seen. But yeah, that is definitely a negative.
That one leads me nicely onto my negative, actually, which is the second string D-line is not a second string D-line. Like the second half, a lot of the problems that were coming with missed tackles and things were coming as a result predominantly of the fact that we couldn't stop the run at the line. Everyone was getting through. We were needing to make tackles 5 yards out, after 5 yards of gain. The safeties and the corners and the linebackers were all having to mop up plays which shouldn't have got as far as them in the first place. Outside of Mike Morris and Jamie Sheriff,
who was fantastic again.
Yeah, he was fantastic again. I really don't think there's an awful lot of depth like Levelston and was Miles Adams out there
Miles
yesterday?
Adams, I believe so.
Miles Adams
Yeah.
did not play.
Did not play.
Nope.
Buddha, what's his name? Buddha Jones? Buddha Jones play? Trying to remember who else was out there. Whoever it was, they were not up to roster-worthy standards for me. So my negative is going to be that there is not much D-line depth outside of the 6 or 7 names that you could name automatically, is what I'm trying to say. There's not been a UDFA in this crop, apart from Jamie Sheriff, that really has stood out or looked worthy of the roster.
So just a slight update. One of the accounts I do follow for injuries, it's said that the likelihood, and it's a guy that was a team doctor for years in the NFL, Chenna's likely sustained an MCL sprain. So because he was able to jog a bit getting off the field, they don't think it's torn, but that could put him on IR for 4 weeks to get it recovered properly before he comes back. So that's the latest I've kind of seen scouring the web here.
Which
that makes a lot of sense.
Leads me on very much to a negative, much like Mitch's negative, where I think this game and obviously the points allowed showed that this isn't going to be an instant fix defensively. If Chenna's going to be out for 4 weeks, fine, because Mitch and I have both said we predict sort of mid-season when it's all going to start blending together and being a dominant defense. That was my negative of there was so many things where you could see what they needed to do or wanted to do, but I think the personnel just didn't quite get it. And this was, again, like all the preseason, the second half, when you get the third stringers, like the backups in, who are fighting for that roster spot, who should be, in my opinion, as a backup, you want to be the guy who knows it off by heart, who should be learning every single scheme, every single call. And we were saying that off air, some of the green dot wearers, the linebackers, you had like O'Connell, you had Drake Thomas. I thought they were fantastic, because if you're going to be a backup linebacker who wants to get your spot, you're going to learn everything. You're going to learn the calls, like where you need to be. But I think there was so many players in that game, especially in that second half again, and we know it's inconsequential because half of those people will get cut, who just didn't show what Mike Mack wanted or what the team needs to do defensively. I'll be honest, like whilst I was watching this through bleary eyes yesterday, I was actually quite impressed. Even the touchdowns we let in, I mean, there was one that I thought D. Williams, if he turned his head, could have tracked that ball to put his arm up sooner. But apart from that, I was surprisingly impressed. I just think this every preseason game, the second half of every game, you're going to get those plays that won't happen with your starting players or that the first teamers. But I think I'll take it for now. I just think the backups need to really up their game. So with that is our 2 negatives each, I believe. Done them all. My maths was right. Yep. That's good. Let's get to some questions and comments. And I'll be very honest, even though there's a lot of people watching, the majority is Gary. In fact, Gary is all over this. Gary Swain is our number 1 fan and commenter. So Gary, shout out to you. You are an absolute hero. And I'll start with this. Sorry, Mitch, I'm covering your face there. Let's go this way. There you go. He agrees with Bryce. They were outplayed, but still won the game, which is something that would not have happened previously. 100% agree. The plays where we won the plays, we scored the touchdowns, I think they were the highlights, but I think overall wasn't the best. And I think that was evident in Mike Mack's post-game press conference. You could tell he wasn't happy. He was happy with the win, but not with how it was played.
Yeah, listening to his the one thing I've kind of, as another revelation of this new era of Seahawks football, there's no over optimism and downplaying significant negatives like with Pete. Mike
I love
McDonald
that, though.
can tell you exactly how he feels about something. There's no sugarcoating, and he said it. Like, someone asked him, like, "Oh, do you think you're where you need to be at this, with this team? Is like the team ready yet?" And he goes, "We're ready for where we are right now, not where we want to be at the end of the year. Like, this team still isn't fully put together the way I want it." And you can tell that he's very emphatic about the fact that this isn't his final image of how this year's team is supposed to look. Where with Pete, we get the, "Oh yeah, we're great." And again, this isn't just me saying, I'm bashing on Pete. It's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
I got so tired of hearing Pete not tell you why things were bad. Like, hey, we didn't play well. We busted coverages. Guys weren't communicating properly. Like, having Mike McDonald say those things right away in a press conference, being like, "Here's the issues. We're going to go back and look at it, and we're going to fix it. Yes, there's some good stuff here, but this, and this are the things we need to fix before week 1 versus Denver." It's like,
It's so
hey,
refreshing.
you're actually being honest about what's going on, and these are things we can actually look to see if they're getting fixed by the time Denver comes into town.
Yeah, it's like the negative yes man. It's like the no man. The fact that he turned around and said, "I want us to do things wrong so we can watch them on tape and learn," as opposed to, "I want everything to go right purely because I want to see how good everything I'm doing is." He said in press conferences, "We were good, but we need to improve on this, and this. We want to take it away, watch the video, we want to coach it," which I think as well leads on to Gary's other comment. Couldn't agree more. Good coaching maximizes players' potential, and this coaching staff has already shown they can coach. And I completely biased as a British podcast. Aidan Durday, I think every video I've seen of Durday defensively, the fact that, and we said this on our last pod, he will stop a session if someone does something wrong to do a one-on-one coaching session with that player to correct the issue, speaks verses as coaches. I cannot stand, could never stand as a sportsman, a coach that will let a drill or anything go all the way through and then pull you up on what was going wrong. And you'll know this, but we'll have this conversation on our coaching pod. But I could never ever get on with that, because in my mind, if I've not been pulled up on it, nothing's wrong. But then to be told when you're on that high, to be told, "Oh, actually, during this play, this, and this was wrong," you go from up here to down here instantly. Whereas you stop it, you coach it right there, reset it, and then let it improve that way. I think that this is sort of evident. I have a feeling that Grubb, everything we've seen of him, we know of him, he's that type of coach as well.
Yeah, to address both points, the first point, the first question, and the second question, all in one. I think there's such a raised bar for accountability in this team now. Like, Grubb's going to call you out on not necessarily call you out, but he isn't going to let the play carry on if he sees something fundamentally wrong with what you're doing. He's going to correct you right there and then. Mike Mack isn't going to, glaze over a horrible performance when he's asked about it. He's just going to say, "Yeah, we didn't do it right. Like, we need to go back to the drawing board. That wasn't correct. We've left points out there, or we've given up too many points because of X, Y, and Z." Nobody so far that I've heard speak on this coaching staff is going to protect anyone unless it's unjustified. If someone says something that's true and real, they're just going to say, "Okay, no, fair enough," and just address it, and that's great. Pete Carroll will have installed in players like Rick Woolen unbelievable, intangible kind of self-belief and attitudes, sort of traits, right? There are things that Pete could coach you, which I don't think any other coach in the NFL could do for you. Your personal belief and things like that. But Mike Mack is bringing something else, an accountability and a responsibility for your own role, which Pete did not bring. At least publicly, he didn't show that, right? So what I'm trying to say is they have two very different coaches, and anyone that ends up coached by both, like Reek Woolen, like Devon Witherspoon, like Jay Love, will take so much from both sides.
Yeah, completely agree. I think it's the stark and realistic contrast between the two is something that I think this franchise needs, because we've had the rah, everything's cool, and let's face it, we all loved Pete, but by the end of his tenure, we kind of knew where it was going, and we knew the complacency that set in with players. And I think this is going to be a real eye opener for people. It's going to be a massive thing for progression. And Bryce, I'll say it again, I'm so looking forward to our coaching podcast, because we're going to chop this up for an hour, and I can't wait to see what rugby coaches and American football coaches say about it, because I think there's going to be so many similarities with what we preach and what we want, as there will be professionally. I've got one more from Gary. In fact, no, I'll give him two more, because he's got a positive and a negative. And
can I add one point, Josh?
Go, dude.
With AD. So I just want to kind of note this for Hawks fans. In that Titans game, AD called the first half of defense.
Mm-hmm.
Carl Scott called the second half. There was a distinct difference in how the defenses operated. And the thing that drove me nuts was when I watched the second half of the Titans game, and I've gone back and watched that game 4 times now. Watching Carl Scott call plays gave me Pete Carroll flashbacks to our defense. Yep. Everything was off. We weren't attacking. We were waiting. And you look at what the Titans did. All of a sudden, they were like Malik Willis was moving the ball, and Mason Rudolph, when AD was calling it, you could see the Mike McDonald influence on him and how the pressure came and all. It was like Carl Scott was afraid to bring pressure. And I'm like, oh, like, come on. Like, don't tell me there's that much of a discrepancy between one guy being working, Carl, you're now working with Mike McDonald. Please embrace this side of defense and don't stick to Pete Carroll stuff, because, like, I don't know. I wonder to a point if there will come a point for like a guy like Carl Scott where they might go get a different coach if he can't embrace the way Mike McDonald wants defense to be done when it comes to even coaching up the DB position.
I think with Scott, it's the players love him. He's a fantastic coach individually. I think defensive. We said this about Clint Hurt last week.
Yeah.
As a play caller, he's not there yet. I think as a man-to-man coach, the guys love him. He teaches the right things. But as we saw in that second half, and Mitch and I mentioned it last week, I don't think his play calling ability is there. He plays too much as a secondary player. Everyone's standing off those 10 yards. Like you said, that Pete Carroll, just it was so, in my opinion, it's negative defense. It's giving everything underneath. Whereas the Mike Mack defense is pressure in your face. If you're going to throw anything, you've got to throw it under pressure. It's got to be short. And if it's short, we are probably going to try and get to anyway. So, Gary, come on. You got two more, my friend. Let's have a look. Where were we? Positive. How explosive the offense looked, or offense looked. Can't remember when this team looked so scary on offense. Agreed. And I think that's been the way all season. I think the first quarter, and I have watched the replays of it. Obviously, the two gentlemen here with me, that way. There you go. Did I get the right way? I'm genuinely not sure. I think it's the score line on this said a lot. That it wasn't a preseason game that was like 14 points or 17 points or just a load of like field goals from Myers, who luckily this game did really well. I think pretty sure it was 100% this year, this game, unlike the other two games. Gary's negatives. O-line still looks inconsistent, and that could really hurt Gino and the offense. Bryce mentioned this earlier. I think our starting O-line may be better than what we've seen in the preseason. If I say may, it will be. I think that the depth is going to be our Achilles heel here.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the starters. I think if we keep a fit offensive line, which, touch wood, happens, but it's unlikely. I think we're equipped to give Gino plenty of time.
Mhm.
A single injury to a starting tackle with Abe Lucas on the pup list, we start to look like a porous offensive line. And we've seen it in preseason. The distinct difference when we go down that depth chart. It doesn't look like the same offense. So, yeah, agree with Gary on that.
Yeah, the thing for me is, and this is something that's kind of a thing that I've been talking with a couple other Seahawks podcasters about. I wonder with the next couple of days if Seattle doesn't make a trade, because they have 10 million now roughly in cap space, which is more than usual going into a season. I know there's an acute that goes for the practice squad and whatnot and your injuries, but I wonder if there might be a right tackle that potentially is going to get cut that would be a starter, or at least give you some insurance of better quality of play that they don't make a move for and try and pick up with either a late round pick or another player that they may be able to move off this roster that wouldn't make it here but might make it somewhere else. Just because George Fant's not a spring chicken. He's had his own battles with injuries. I really like where Mike Jarrell is coming from, but he's still in development.
Mm-hmm.
So if we lose Fant in the first 4 weeks at some point, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. You're looking at either Stone Forsythe again, McClendon Curtis, if he makes this roster, or a rookie in Mike Jarrell from Div 2 playing against Miami and Detroit and, potentially New England, is not exactly the most encouraging sign for me. So that's why I think there could be a play at some point in here for a tackle to come in, because I'm at this point, if Abe Lucas ever plays a snap for the Seahawks again, will be a bonus, is how I feel at this point.
I agree with you.
I was just going to very quickly just say, when you're looking at the rosters getting chopped from 90 to 53, the kind of ballpark that we'd be looking at for like a solid depth veteran would be the kind of player that you'd cut and maybe save 4 million, 3, 4, 5 million. And the 10.5 million that we've got available is not 10.5 net, or over half of that is going to be taken up with pup and practice squad and all of that stuff. So we're looking at about 4.5, 5 million net available. I think if we cut someone like Rattigan, suddenly, which we'll get onto, but you're suddenly looking at about 8, and you could pick up a decent veteran that gets cut. And then, of course, if you were to say extend that veteran to a 2-year and then move a bit of money, there's a few things you can do, but the right player needs to become available in the next week. But we can react.
I was going to say, as we're talking about cuts, movement, I think it's time we should probably get onto our 53-man roster selection. Before we do so, everyone that's watching, thank you so much. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share. You can follow us on X. We're on Insta. We've obviously the YouTube channel. We're on pretty much every single podcasting app you can find. We've got a Facebook group as well. You can find us posting in majority of Seahawks fans' Facebooks. We really appreciate everything that you guys do in reacting, interacting with us. If you want to come on board, drop us a DM on any of those social media platforms, or our email is down there. And we'd be happy to get you on. We've got some fantastic guests lined up as well. Bryce will be one of them. He's got no option now. He's handcuffed. So we'll be reviewing every single game this year with a different 12 from a different country. Currently, we've got lined up. We've got the Latin Seahawkers, the Canadian Seahawkers, some UK Seahawkers. We've got some podcasters. Everyone, if you want to get involved, please let us know. And also, Bryce, I apologize. This may cover your face. There you go. Just peer around it. join our Discord. The king of the Discord is the man to my far left or right. I'm not sure it appears here. Mitch. We've got a fantastic group of people that are in there that we're sharing stories. We're sharing all of our thoughts on the Seahawks. We're sharing our game breakdowns. We have these live. If anyone's in there, we talk about it live in one of our channels. It's a brilliant place to be. It's a safe space as well. We do not tolerate any hate speech. We don't tolerate any all cap shouting. We just want to have a good, yeah. I'm going to keep.
I love that you remember that. We had a guy in the Discord last week during the Titans game, and we were about 3 snaps into the game, and he was block capitals, swearing, like screaming the house down about Gino. And I said to Josh in DMs, one more sweary block capital line out of this guy, and I'm just going to remove him because. There's no more of a turn off when you're trying to talk to your friends about the game and some random guys just in there screaming and shouting and being overly I don't mind negativity if there's a good reason for it. We all need to vent, but yeah, that was that's not the kind of people we're looking for.
As we're mentioning this as well, can we please just say a massive hello to Enrique? I apologize. My Spanish is awful. Placencia, who is the president of the Latin American Seahawkers. Thank you very much for tuning in, dude. By all means, get in touch with us. We will get you or any of your chapter members on. We are a podcast by 12s, for 12s, with 12s. We're giving everyone this opportunity to come and speak. But
roster,
shall we talk 53-man roster?
Let's do it.
So, for our 53-man roster, we are going to be using the roster builder from the German Seahawkers. If you've not checked it out, the web link is there. It is roster.germanseahawkers.com, and it is a fantastic tool. So we're going to go through a 53-man roster. There's obviously going to be a little bit of a discussion about this, as there's always going to be, because we've all got our own thoughts and we know who we want and who we don't want. So, whilst as we're live, please bear with me because I need to pop this up on the screen. But gentlemen, when it comes to the roster builder, what are your thoughts at the moment? Are you thinking, as we did on the HawksZone Rundown, I think we go the staples of the roster and then backfill from there again?
Yeah,
sure,
I agree with that.
Cool. So again, the German Seahawkers website, the guys who have put the effort into building this is fantastic. It will be updated very soon, but it's a great tool. Before the roster cuts come in, get yourself on there, see what happens. Translate into English. They've actually got an option for English or German. So we'll start. So we'll start with the offense. Quarterbacks, gentlemen, I will click buttons. I will let you guys decide, and I will feed in if needs be. So PJ Walker to start with. He's starting. No,
well, I wish. No. Practice. I don't even think PJ Walker's on the practice squad. To be brutally honest with you, I think they'll pick up somebody else at some point in the next couple of days. A couple names that I can think of. One being if Jake Haener doesn't make it in New Orleans, he's got familiarity with Ryan Grubb and the system. Played for him at Fresno State. I could see him being someone that they potentially look at bringing in. I just don't think Walker gives you any value on the practice squad. Yes, he's played, but he hasn't when he has started in games. It's really, if you look at the games, they've been super close and basically banking on his defense to bail him out of some shitty situations. So I'm not a fan. Watching him last night even didn't instill any more confidence in me. So yeah, we know it's Gino and Sam going forward.
Agreed.
There you go. Wide receivers. So I think the wide receiver, running back, tight end conversation will be one of the biggest ones in this offensive unit. But I think we can all agree the starting three of DK, Tyler, JSM.
I'd say four include Bobo.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I was going to say. I think he's a lock for four. Yeah.
Which then leaves us with Ty Scott, Chenault, Eskridge, Young, White, Winston, Williams, Hayden Hatton, who has become the invisible man. So
I think Chenault makes it for sure. I think he's earned himself a spot.
Agree. Which then leaves us with are we taking 5 or 6 wide receivers here? And if we're taking 6, who do we take? Or do we leave this and come back to it?
So
I think we have to select D. Williams here because I think he's making this roster, but I don't think he's making it as a wide receiver. But we can't select him in the cornerback room. So I think that. Do you agree, Bryce? Do you think that we have to select him here?
For the receiver group here, we're going to have 7 because, like you said, D. Williams should be under the cornerback group, and I think they're taking 6 receivers. And the reason I say that is I don't know if you guys heard Mike McDonald talk about Derek Young in his post game.
He loves him.
He loves Derek Young, what he brings and everything. I think Derek Young makes this, and then you put D. Williams in as a corner that we just can't put in the corner slot because I think he's going to be back there with Chenault as the main 2 kick returners.
So we'll put Young in there. We'll keep a spot open for Williams. Running back. So we all know it's going to be Ken Walker, Charbonnet. I think the question is, do we carry 4 or 3 and hope to stash McIntosh or Helani? I don't think Colby Lewis has shown enough in preseason to garner himself a roster spot. So I'd like to say thank you very much as well for the serendipitous 53 people watching on YouTube at the moment as we're doing our 53-man roster cuts. Personally, I think it's McIntosh's.
I think it's both, and I say that just because statistically we haven't carried less than 4 running backs on a roster for 7 years. I know it's a different coaching staff. So if there's ever going to be a change to that, it's going to be, with a different coaching staff. But I can't see us changing from 4 to 3 when we've got 4 such talented running backs. I think we carry 4, genuinely.
I say we go with 3 and see how the offensive line plays out.
Yeah,
I am kind of with you, but if we're going with 3,
Kenny Mack.
Who is the 3?
Yes.
It's Kenny Mack. I love Helani and what he brings, but if watching in that game, Kenny Mack got the first reps with the starting group, which to me was a real indicative sign that he's probably the 3rd guy because it wasn't George Helani out there with Gino. And you look at his 1 carry. That's the one thing that everyone knocked Kenny Mack for in the combine was his slow 40. And you watch his run there. He actually pulled away and then was able to provide a stiff arm, or as Michael Bennett said on the podcast, a stiffy. He got stiffied. So I think Kenny Mack.
Best bit of commentary ever, because I think every British person went, "A what?" And that's probably the same honestly, universally.
If I was Fox, I'd be calling Michael Bennett right now to have him do what Tony Saragusa used to do for their show, for their podcast or their broadcast, where he was down on the field. Michael Bennett's just a national treasure. Honestly, he is. Awesome. But yeah, I just look at Kenny McIntosh. I think he gives you something that the other 2 above him don't. In his ability to be, I think he might be the best pass catcher out of the backfield out of the 3. And I think that's something Ryan Grubb wants in his offense, is to have a pure receiving 3rd down back if needed, depending on the situation. And I look at, they wear the same number. I think Kenny McIntosh is an upgrade over what Travis Homer used to do that was so well for us. Like, he actually is a receiving 3rd down back. And I think that's what gives him the edge, is he can take a run like that and hit a hole and go for 56 yards, where I don't know if George Helani can.
And talking about... Sorry, Josh, you go, mate.
I was going to say, I think me and Mitch said this, was it last week or the week before with Helani? When you look at the pedigree, if you try and stash McIntosh on your practice squad, he's getting picked up. He's got the Georgia pedigree. If you stash Helani on there, you've got more chance of him staying on the practice squad because of him being from Boise State. Whereas... yeah, I think that's the right selection. I think McIntosh, I was high on him come out of the draft. I was shocked by how low he fell after his college production and sort of the plays he made, but it was all down to his 40 time. Halani, obviously UDFA. I think he could be stashed on the practice squad, and we hope and pray to whatever deity you want to pray to, he will stay there.
Kenny Mack's giving you special teams, checks as well.
Yeah.
Receiving and gunning. I think he's a serious option for special teams. And
it's now also 3 running backs we've got that can play as an extra receiver. Because the
Chenault as well can double up as running back 4 with some looks. So
yeah. There we go. Right. So should we move on to tight end?
I think so.
So I think it's obviously Noah Fant, tight end 1.
Yep.
No argument there. Pharaoh Brown, tight end 2. Okay.
I think he's going to be back. If you've seen his videos, he's already moving around. I think he's going to be back for week 1. And then I think, honestly, the 2 other ones are Barner and Russell. They're not going to risk Barner going to practice squad because they'll lose him. Yeah. He's the youngest in his position that came out this year. And as the preseason's gone on, he started to show a little bit more. And I think he's got a lot of good developmental traits where I think he's more of a mix of a Colby Parkinson and with Will Dissly type. You kind of get a 2-for-1 in that situation. He can catch and move out of the back or out of the tight end spot as well as stay in and block. So I think next year he will be your tight end 2 because I don't see Pharaoh Brown being on the roster next year.
Isn't Pharaoh Brown's on a 1-year contract, isn't he?
Yep.
So are we saying we're going to take 4 tight ends?
Correct.
So Mitch, do you agree?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think as a blueprint, you've got a backup there for Noah Fant, and you've got a backup there for Pharaoh Brown. Mm-hmm. You've got a 1-2. You've got a 1-2 for for those 2 tight end types. I like that.
Yeah. So Tyler Mabry renews his lease on his apartment above the VMAC as a practice squad player for another year. That's 65 years.
I don't think he makes the practice squad.
Oh,
yeah, you think Westover, and I think Westover.
I think Westover makes it instead because he gives you more versatility than Tyler Mabry. You've got another blocking type with AJ Barner already on your roster. If Pharaoh Brown is out for any significant amount of time, you don't have another Brady Russell type that gives you those unique abilities in your offense. Jack Westover does give you that.
Just on the subject of practice squads, I saw a thing today. I don't know. I think it might have been the same last year, but practice squad is 16 players with 4 that you can protect from being sniped each week. You can declare 4 unsnipeable prospects out of 16 each week. But I think there is a limit on how many times you can protect the same player on the practice squad. I don't know if that's correct. It's definitely 16 with 4 that you can designate as unavailable for signing off your practice squad, which is a new concept to me. I've never thought about that. But this year, with some of the players going on our practice squad, potentially that could be huge.
That's a very good question. I will research whilst you 2 discuss the O-line. Sure. Although if we're going to talk O-line, I think we kind of know the starting O-line. If we're looking at this, I think I'll just go from top left all the way down. Anthony Bradford, in.
Yep.
Yep.
Ilm Manning, no. Jalen Sundell, no. Connor Williams,
yes.
Jalen Sundell's on the bubble for me, by the way.
I was going to say he's on the bubble for me too.
If Abe Lucas starts on the pup, I think Jalen Sundell gets carried onto the roster as a tackle that has played center for us. I think those are 2 question mark positions because our starting center is coming off an injury and our starting tackle is coming off an injury. Having a guy that can cover both on the bubble is intriguing.
And the other intriguing thing for me about Sundell is if you look at his RAS score, it almost is identical to Connor Williams. And so for me, he actually has played very well. He's a 3-year starter at center and played his last year as a tackle and still got all conference as a tackle. I don't want to risk losing that guy. So I think there's a chance that Jalen Slindell actually makes this, like Mitch said, the 53-man roster.
Okay. Well, we'll leave him on the bubble.
Cross, yes.
Right. So Cross.
Well, you don't think we can
Lucas.
stash Cross on the practice squad?
We could try.
As we're live, I'll be back in 2 secs. I've just heard my daughter, so you two can discuss this and let me know when I come back.
Yeah.
Okay,
sure.
so Laken Tomlinson, we both know is going to be the starting left guard at least to start the season. Christopher Haynes makes it. Olu makes it because he's really, if Connor Williams can't go, will be the starting center game 1. Stone Forsyth, what are your thoughts?
I kind of want this to be the moment where he doesn't make it, just because we flushed this offensive line group with so much talent. I see higher upside on a lot of these guys than I do on Forsyth.
Agreed.
But from a readiness standpoint, if we need to rely on someone immediately, he's kind of the guy. If you look at this year as a transitional year where we could have a a 7-10 or an 8-9 season because we're in transition. If that's the case, surely you choose the upside of a high ceiling over a known entity.
Agreed. Yeah, because when I look at this, I wonder if Stone Forsyth could sneak through to the practice squad. I don't know if he's put enough on tape to be picked up and be one of your veteran stashes on the practice squad where you can call him up on game day.
I mean, at the end of the day, if we put Stone Forsyth on the practice squad and someone picked him up and he played in the NFL, I'm happy for him.
Yep.
You could look at it and say he was given a huge amount of opportunity in his 4 years. It's not like he's been a backup for 4 years and hasn't played at all. He's played extensive snaps during a lot of injury-ridden seasons, and hasn't ever really made noticeable strides. So if we put him on the practice squad and he goes somewhere, good for him. Next man up.
Well, and the thing for me is the way I would see it is how you have those elevation periods for your veterans. I think it's 3 elevations you can use without them, and then they revert. If Abe Lucas goes on PUP for the first 4 weeks and Stone Forsyth's on your practice squad, you could elevate him those first 3 weeks. And that saves you that gap. But then you're not putting a, Jarrell or Greenfield, who I actually really like. I think Greenfield's actually played surprisingly well in the preseason, especially at left tackle. So I would rather feel more comfortable with him potentially making this over a Stone Forsyth. Okay, so Josh, do you need to be filled in here? Because me and Mitch just
sorry, it was a false alarm. She was murmuring, and I had to give her a quick cuddle. Family first all the time.
Of course.
So apologies to anyone watching, but my daughter always comes first.
Tomlinson makes it. We've already discussed that.
Yep.
Christian Haynes. Olu, because if Connor Williams can't go, he is your starting center. And this is where we had just gotten to, was both me and Mitch are not sold that Stone Forsyth makes this roster.
He's not. In my opinion, I don't think I had such high hopes from him coming out of Miami that I thought he could be a fantastic sort of backup swing tackle, but he only shows mediocre play at right tackle. At left tackle, he gets exposed all the time, and it's sometimes embarrassing. Last week against
we
Tennessee,
got run over by the linebacker and put on.
He got run over into McIntosh, tripped over McIntosh's feet, and he was luckily he managed to recover the fumble. But I think it's got to a point now where there's no loyalty with his coaching staff, where they don't need him to be there because they've drafted him. I think he's going to be a casualty here. I personally think you're going to be looking at George Fant. Obviously, he's going to make it. I think you're also. I don't think McClendon Curtis is in.
So Tara LeMayer.
I think LeMayer and Jarrell.
Yes.
are going to be the two there, because that's guard tackle flexibility. That is tackle flexibility, where I think they'll make him a swing tackle, and he's shown athletically he can do it.
And this is the scenario me and Mitch had talked about with Forsyth, is if you're able to get him through the practice squad, you have the 3 elevations, I believe it is, that you can elevate, and then he reverts back. You just elevate him on game day. Well, for those first 4 weeks, if Abe Lucas is on PUP, you can elevate Stone Forsyth. And then after that point, he can't be elevated and reverted again. So you can either decide at that point what you're going to do with him, if you're going to protect him, if he's going to be one of your protected players, or you just leave him exposed to be signed by a team somewhere at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we can always re-sign him to the practice squad then, and if someone else comes in before us, because we'll get last dibs on re-signing him. If no one else goes from at that point, he's back. Dibs. He's back. Yeah, if no one takes him, then he's back. Then he's back on the practice squad, and it's fine. If someone takes him, then good for him. Go play some football.
Yeah. So are we going to say LeMayer and Jarrell?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
And then I think, obviously, when we come back, someone like Greenfield might be.
Sunday.
Yeah.
I think out of this group that's remaining, 2 key priority practice squad guys for me are Sundell and Greenfield.
Yeah, agreed. Right. Defense, linebackers.
Okay, so we have to be specific on this, I think, because on this it doesn't specify edge versus inside.
No. It's just it's outside linebacker and middle linebacker are all together. So
what do we want to go with first?
Let's just nail down the inside first. I think Baker, Dodson, and Knight are locks.
Yep.
Okay.
I think we can agree on that. Dodson's top right.
Yep, I should have my glasses on here.
And Knight's right beside him. There you go.
Yeah. And then Chenna.
Possible pup, right? No.
Possible pup IR, yeah, for the first 4 weeks. But he's going to be on this roster, so we might as well just put him on. Boy Mafe, yep.
Derek
Hall, yes. Okay, now and don't forget, one of our linebacker / edges will be Draymond Jones as well, who will be putting under the D-line section, so he'll count in this. Okay, so for me, the other inside, because we were going to carry 4, most likely is going to be, in my opinion, will be Drake Thomas, because of the fact he hadn't played any preseason until last night and came out second group green dot, and he had the green dot on and was working with Knight in there. I think that dude has a lot of upside that I don't think a lot of people know about. And the Raiders, and I have friends that are with the Raiders, they were extremely upset that he got put in a position where he could be poached from a practice squad situation, and that Seattle grabbed him. I like his versatility because of the fact he's so good in coverage.
I was going to say it is sideline to sideline speed. Again, his tackling technique, I think, is fantastic. He drops people at the point of contact. There's not many people that will run through him and gain extra yards. His game intelligence, the fact that he got put in there as a green dot wearing middle linebacker says everything. But he can move around that whole linebacker group. We could put him outside linebacker and he'd still fare really well. I agree completely there.
And Jamie Sheriff.
Yeah, see, this is where, like, Jamie Sheriff, I am completely on board. Like I said, it was one of my positives. But I'm at that point where I think if we pick Drake Thomas and we move through the rest of the positions, if there is space, Sheriff may sneak on.
Well, I know we said we put Nwosu on because he's going to make the roster, but for the sake of next Tuesday's cut down from 90 to 53, if Chenna's put onto the pup, we could carry Jamie Sheriff on Tuesday and then kick the can down the road with decision making. I think that could be a potential situation that we see where Jamie Sheriff gets like a 3 to 4 week sort of exposure to the NFL.
Maybe. So I am not sold on Jamie Sheriff making this roster because of cut downs and guys from other teams that may become available that are better suited to fit in right now if Chenna goes on the pup. Because, yes, Jamie Sheriff had a fantastic preseason, but Jamie Sheriff was also doing most of his damage versus third teamers and guys relatively to his same skill set.
Yeah.
I don't know if Jamie Sheriff, for example, is beating I can't remember the off tackle for the Broncos right now. Garrett Bowles or whatever his name is, I think it is. I don't think Jamie Sheriff's beating him in a one-on-one in a game situation right now. I think what's more likely, and we picked Drake Thomas, he makes it on. I wonder if there's a higher chance because of Draymond's ability to play the edge if they don't take a Pat O'Connell as well, potentially. Because you don't know, we talk about Uchenna, we don't know what Jerome Baker's situation is. He has been battling. Yes, he came back to practice and went through walkthrough, but he has been battling a hamstring injury all along. He could potentially be a possibility for PUP as well, or IR for our first 4 weeks, as well as Chenna. So that's where I'm kind of.
I agree, and I think the Jamie Sheriff conversation is one of those where when we picked our starters and our backups, we then start looking at who will fill the roster. So much like we did on the HawksZone Rundown when we did our initial one a few weeks ago. I personally, and I've said, I think Jamie Sheriff's been fantastic, but you do have to bear in mind that he's played against backups. I'd love to see his development. I'd love the fact if we could sneak him onto a practice squad.
I think he can
keep developing him. Yeah, I'd love that. Right, so we'll leave the linebackers like inside, outside. Let's go on to the cornerbacks, and I think we know it's going to be Witherspoon, Woolen. Obviously, this unfortunately hasn't been updated because the German Seahawkers are currently having a jolly up either in London watching the AEW or an early Oktoberfest somewhere. So we know two of them at least.
Trey Brown's the third.
Trey Brown's definitely in there. I think for the sake of development, I think you're probably going to look at DJ James.
Yep. That's the Mike Jack move right there. It's for both of them to make it.
And then, see, this is where I think Kobe Bryant, even though we're going to put him as a cornerback, he's, in my opinion, universal secondary. He's just going to be
backup free safety. He is the backup to Julian Love at free safety. And you can see even when last night him and Kayvon Wallace were out there together, he's the free and kind of more commanding things, and Kayvon's more of your quote unquote strong safety in that situation. And on the play that we talked about earlier, the busted coverage in the second quarter where Jameis Winston hit the guy by himself, who's the guy that comes over and cleans up the whole mess? Kobe Bryant, and he punches the ball out. Luckily for the Browns, it went out of bounds. But that's something he brings to you. He is so good at that peanut Tillman. For people that don't know, Charles Tillman was a corner for the Bears. He was known for what they called the peanut punch. He would knock the ball out almost every time he went in for a tackle. And that's something Kobe Bryant's starting to become known for.
Well, that was his thing throughout his rookie season as well.
Yeah.
Because was it? So he had 3 or 4 peanut punches where he caused the fumbles because of his tackle technique and getting the arm through the ball carrying arm to punch it out. I think he's personally nailed on to be a backup safety. He can't be a cornerback. And Mitch and I have said this. I think I've beaten this drum to death now, where he cannot be an elite cornerback in the NFL. Because if you put him up against someone like a Tyreek Hill, he'll get embarrassed. He's intelligent, he's strong, he's got great tackle technique, he's got great technique in coverage, but he is not quick enough. However, at safety, it gives him the time, the space to be able to make the plays that he needs to play or needs to do. So are we in agreement, Mitch? You've been very quiet here with Kobe.
I completely agree with everything you've both said. He does make this roster. We have to put him in the cornerback room because that's where he is on this app. And I also think D. Williams is the last one on there, but he'd be in the wide receiver part. Yeah, but I think that's seven players there. or 6 minus Kobe Bryant.
The other safeties. So I think, and when we've done our 53, I'm going to ask you about your opinions on captains. And I'd love to know our viewers and listeners' opinions on this as well, because I have strong opinions on it and where this franchise should go. But for this season, we'll discuss it after this. So obviously, Love signed a new contract. He's in.
Jenkins is in.
Jenkins is in.
Kayvon Wallace is in.
Yeah. See, I was half and half last week.
He's
Garrett
on the
Reed,
pop.
he's on the pop.
Marquise doesn't make it.
He won't make it. No. He'll be a practice squad veteran, I think. And I think Ty Okada, like, he makes the 53 initially if Jenkins is out any substantial amount of time.
Yeah.
But if he's not, I think they're going to try and sneak him through to the practice squad.
I think Ty Okada offers that safety cornerback flexibility, but I don't think he's good enough to warrant a straight up 53 spot.
If he's to play corner, it's nickel. It's not outside.
Oh yeah, it's got to be inside. He's again like Kobe. He's not fast enough to play outside.
And speaking to that point, that's why I don't know if he makes it, because of the fact Kayvon can play in the slot, Kobe can play in the slot. You've got Witherspoon already, and if Artie Burns is still on this team, but through a hey, we cut you, bring you back week 2, so we don't guarantee your salary, or we put you on PUP or whatever it is, or IR. He last night when Trey Brown was out was the first nickel, and Witherspoon was on the outside.
Okay, so I think we'll leave those three as they are. This is the beauty of this, or with the German Seahawkers website, where it's you've not got to pick them. Sort of that's it. You've picked and done.
Yeah.
You can pick and go back, which we found out on the HawksZone Rundown podcast where we first did it. And if anyone's listening to this and watching this and wants to do it, this is a great. It's like fantasy football for who you want for the Seahawks. The D line, I think this is pretty much nailed on. It's Byron Murphy, Leo Williams,
Draymond
Jones, Cam Young, Jaron Reed.
Yep. John
Hankins,
Mike Morris.
Cam Young.
Pop.
Yeah.
Remember, this is where Mike McDonald, if you listen to his injury talk now compared to when he started, he made the comment that Cam Young was going to be back in about a week at the beginning of training camp. And it's never materialized. And since that point, when people ask him about injuries, he's much more reserved on timelines.
Yeah.
I think and I don't know what the Cameron Young injury is. I think said it was a knee or something like that. I wonder if he's not an IR candidate for the full year. And just will keep you, and basically he doesn't incur a year on his rookie deal because he would have been on IR the whole year, and he can come back fully healthy next year, and they don't go and try and get somebody in this waiver free agency period here to fill the nose tackle position. The one guy out of this group that's remaining that I think is an interesting one that I hope they get through the practice squad is
Levelston.
Yeah. He's actually done quite well, I think, and gives you a little bit of something. So he's a guy I could see making the practice squad.
Well, we have still got spaces, and obviously Miles Adams is perennial. This could be his season, but I think based on what we've got, if we got special teams, we know it's going to be Myers, Dixon. And
hey, I'm just saying this. If there's a kicker that becomes available that's really good at making PATs consistently, we might have to reevaluate the Jason Myers side of things.
I paid him too much money. That's the problem. So special teams, you've got kicker Jason Myers, punter Mike Dixon, obviously some big bits in energy, and then our long snapper is Chris Stoll. So we have now got 4 spots left on our 53-man roster.
Is that 48 or 49 in the corner? I can't really see.
40. Let me squint. Is that? It's 49. So we've got 4 spots left.
4 spots. Okay, so go back to offense, I guess.
So if we're looking at, let's no point going back to QB because we know
No.
it's going to be, we'll carry 2 and pick up
D.
some wild
Williams.
card.
D. Williams,
D. Williams
Yep.
is in.
Okay, so 3 more.
I think as well as Eskridge did in his 1 punt return and all the balls he was fed, I don't think he's going to make it. I think he's going to be a casualty. He's too much of a liability with injury, with mentality, his off-field history as well. I think, unfortunately, Aesop Winston, as much as he's done well in this off-season, I don't think he'll fare well against top-class NFL defenses.
I think he's a victim of the quality that we've already selected as well.
Yeah.
If we didn't pick up LaVisca Chenault during this offseason, I think Aesop Winston Jr. may well make this roster, or Eskridge. And Derek Young having a fit and healthy preseason, which he hasn't had for 2 years, is a huge factor as well. Because we all knew Derek Young was so promising, he just couldn't stay fit. He's had a full preseason process with a whole new coaching staff with no bias, and they've been blown away. So Winston Jr. is a victim of circumstance and other people's talent rather than any wrongdoing.
I think as well with Young, he's got so much positional versatility where you look at, like, they can put him at H-back as a blocking fullback. You can put him in, he could be a big slot. He can play on the outside because he's got the speed, because he's DK Metcalf from Wish. I think that's true. Yeah. I just think that's a great pickup. I think Chenault's played out. I've also got to say the fact I love that the German Seahawks have included the DK Metcalf picture with Tyler Lockett peering right over his shoulder there.
Love that picture.
Right. Running backs then. Are we comfortable with our 3, or is Halani going to get in, or are we going to try and sneak him into the practice squad?
I think you sneak him into the practice squad.
I agree. I think tight ends, the 4 we've got there.
And we have Westover going to the practice squad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't it would take a coach that has watched enough UW football to know what Westover can bring to bring him into their squad. But I think we'll be able to stash him on the practice squad. I think our O-line is set. I think that's deep and versatile. When you look at the starting O-line, let's have this conversation. Starting O-line.
Okay, so I got a question about this, though. Just one question about the O-line. We put Abe Lucas on here. We know he's not going to be on the active 53 to start.
Mm-hmm.
Do we take Sundell because we're not sure about Connor Williams? That's the only question I have here, because Greenfield, I think you can get through potentially the practice squad.
Mm-hmm.
But Sundell has played extremely well. And right now, looking at that, if you don't take him and Connor Williams still isn't ready, Sundell's put a lot of good tape out there as a center. And I think he could get plucked because of what we talked about with his tackle center versatility.
So are you saying that, like, Williams will start on IR, or
he may not start on IR? He may get carried on the 53, but just not be ready week 1.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think if we've got question marks over any 2 positional groups right now, it's D-line and O-line because of starting edge and tackle being question marks.
Mm-hmm.
So I think with the extra 3 picks we've got, taking the most talented player we would be risking on the practice squad onto the 53 makes a whole bunch of sense. So Jalen Sundell makes the roster for me in the absence of Lucas. And I think on defense, in fact, if we go to linebackers,
we still need a 4th for the inside.
Yeah, I think we pick up an extra linebacker here, maybe. Or do you mean D-line?
Drake Thomas needs to go in there as well.
Yeah, Drake Thomas needs to be in.
Oh, yeah.
So that means
now you've got one spot.
And that one spot needs to be either a linebacker. And bear in mind that linebacker, we've also played Mike Morris there a bunch of times over preseason.
Yes.
He's got a lot of positional versatility.
Skill positions apart from outside linebacker are sorted for me.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they are for me as well.
Safeties, corners, wide receivers, tight ends, all locked in. It is just a case of edge, D-line, and O-line. Do we have the depth to cover the question marks?
So here's what
Well-
I would say about the linebacker situation. If you go back to it there, Josh,
Done.
I think we're having a conversation right now between O'Connell
Mhm.
and
Sheriff?
Jamie Sheriff, because again, we talk about Chenna's injury. Baker has again not suited up for a single preseason game. He's still dealing with his hamstring. Yes, he ran around on walkthrough day, which isn't much. It's not a big deal. And he could be one plant away from popping his hamstring again. And then we're down to 3 inside linebackers. And that's asking Tyrese Knight. Yes, he's played well, but a lot where we'd have Drake Thomas go in, but you're still down to 3 guys that play your inside because none of those, Derek Hall, Boy Mafe, any of those guys can step into the inside and play as a linebacker. I think there's a case to be made
I
that
think
because
O'Connell
of Drake,
would be the one.
it's Patrick O'Connell that we put on this because of how good he's in coverage. He's a good communicator, it seems like, as well. And you do have Mike Morris and Draymond Jones to potentially fill some outside reps in certain scheme looks. I just think it's a safer bet because of Baker's current injury history right now with us that you need to carry an extra inside potentially.
I hate it,
I
but I agree. And
Mm.
I think Jamie Sherrick come from a smaller school with his Southern Alabama.
Yep.
I think that there's more of a possibility of being able to stash him on a practice squad and watch him develop. So are we all in agreement? Everyone in favour say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Patrick O'Connell, you have made the 53. So
Nice.
there we go. So in review, let's go through this. Gentlemen, I've got to say there was a lot less arguments than I thought there was going to be there. At quarterback, we've got Gino, obvious starter. Backup, Sam Howell. Running backs, we've taken 3 in Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, and Kenny McIntosh. At wide receiver, and I think there's going to be a bone of contention 1, 2, 3 as to who goes where. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jake Bobo, LaVisca Chenault, Derek Young, and we've got D Williams in there, but he's a wide receiver, cornerback, kick returner. Tight end, we've taken 4, and we've gone Noah Fant, Pharaoh Brown, AJ Barner, and Brady Russell, the man with the outstanding fits. More dungarees, sir, please. Offensive line, we've taken 11. So we've got Bradford, Williams, Cross, Lucas, Tomlinson, Haynes, Oluwatimi, Fant, Lemaya, Gerald, and Sundell. That's personally, obviously, we're biased being a Seahawks podcast, quite a strong group there. Oh no, I think it's going to publish. This is the problem we're doing live. There we go. But luckily,
I think if you click on defense, it might come up there.
it's fine. I can read this. Just bear in mind, I'm going to have to squint. So we've got linebackers. We've got Baker. We've got Dotson, Knight. This including outside linebackers as well. So we've got Chenna, Mafe, Hall, Drake Thomas, and Patrick O'Connell. Cornerback, we've got Witherspoon, Woolen. We've got Trey Brown, DJ James, Nehemiah Pritchett, and we've got Kobe Bryant, who will be playing that safety role as well. And then in our pure safeties, we've got Julian Love, we've got Jenkins, and we've got Wallace. And then D-line, Murphy, Williams, Jones, who will play that inside-outside role. Jaron Reed, got Hankins, and Mike Morris, who again will be playing D-line, inside-outside. And special teams, you have got Jason Myers, Big Dixon Energy, Mike Dixon, and you've got Chris Stoll as our long snapper. Gentlemen, I have to say, I think that is a fantastic 53 there.
There's
I agree.
one thing I'm going to mention, and I know I should have brought it up at the time.
Always throw a spanner in the works. Why is it always you, Mitch? Come on.
Well, yeah, sorry. We didn't mention Barrett, who obviously we traded. I mean, we didn't trade for him. He was a sort of make weight in the which trade was it? Mike Jack trade. Yeah, Mike Jack trade. Who's obviously a linebacker known to Mike Mack, who featured at the end of the game yesterday. Is there any way he shades O'Connell?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I think he takes, because he wasn't on that, I would have taken Barrett over O'Connell and pushed O'Connell through to practice squad. That's what would have actually potentially been the proper.
That one's a coin flip for me.
We'll pop this link out to all of our followers on X and Insta and everything, and see what they come up with. And hopefully, the guys from the German Seahawks will update this before roster cut day, and we can put together the general consensus. But I'm personally really happy with that. My one last question: if you were going to pick a captain for offense, defense, and special teams, who would you go with? Bryce, you first.
Offense is Gino. And I think that's not really up for debate. I would say defensively, I think it could be Leonard Williams. And then special teams, I think, will be Michael Dixon personally. But that leaves, I think you're allowed 2 more. I think you're allowed to have 5 usually.
Yeah.
So on offense, I think it's going to be Tyler Lockett again. They're not going to take it from him. So I think you got Gino and Tyler on offense. Defensively, I know, and I can tell by Mitch's kind of, or not Mitch, Josh's kind of demeanor right now, that he thinks it should go to Witherspoon as the other one.
No, I want it to, but as a player coach, as a team coach, I don't think it will.
No,
because I think
it's
there's
going
a
to go
better
to Love.
option.
I think it's going to be Love and Williams will be the 2 that wear
Virtual
it on
high five to Bosch. Yep.
And I think, I think it'll be Michael Dixon as your special teams guy. I think he's more, the reason why I pick him over Myers is he's more consistent at what he does in his job. And I think that's just a bigger part of it for special teams. And he's been very, very good, especially that punt group as a whole. I think that's going to be your group. And if they're allowed another, because I think Ballore wore it for last year as well. They had 2 for special teams. As crazy as this sounds, I think the other guy for special teams that could wear it, because I think Jay Harbaugh really, really loves him, is Kayvon Wallace. Because Kayvon Wallace is the one that came up to him and said, hey, why don't you have me out here as your personal protector up back? Like, that's a mistake. And ever since he's put him out there, like last night, flew down the field and made a great open field tackle. I think Kayvon Wallace with Mike Dixon will be your other special teams captain. So that's your 6 from my side.
I agree.
Mitch looks excited.
Yeah, no, I was. If you didn't mention Kayvon Wallace and that part of episode 2 of The Sound where Kayvon Wallace had basically said, "You're crazy to not have me out there," and just showed this kind of authority and desire to just make an impact wherever he can. I think that energy for Jay Harbaugh, like, bottle that up and try and get it through all the way through special teams. So agree. The one thing I will say, the coaching staff have been raving about Charles Cross's emerging leadership qualities. So an outside dark horse there for an offensive captain on Charles Cross.
The only thing in that situation, so I agree, but who are you taking it away from between Gino and Tyler?
Yeah, that's toughy because you always want your QB to have that kind of badge of,
and they talked about his leadership,
badge of honor, isn't it?
Yeah.
It commands respect. I mean, for me, it's I agree 100% with Bryce. Everyone is mentioned there. Veterans in the team, established players. Love has been a captain in New York and come to Seattle and has garnered that respect. I would love to see a new coaching staff bring in a new ethos when it comes to captaincy of like hard, aggressive players. Someone like DK, it may calm him down. Witherspoon, I would love to see him as a team captain, but I don't think he's ready now. I think in a season or two, and I was saying this with Jonas and Pascal from the German Seahawkers last night, we're going to re-sign him regardless. He's going to be hopefully one of those players that we just pump money into. I'd love to see him as a captain at some point. I think special teams, agree completely. And weirdly enough, the other week, Mitch, you and I said Kayvon Wallace may be on the ball because he wasn't playing a lot, wasn't making a massive impact. But when you see what he's doing on the sideline and when he does get on the field, the production he gives, that may be a really good shout. So I'm you know what, I'm on board with everything you've said.
So I've got one caveat here, and this is because of what you said, Josh, just now, and it's about Tyler Lockett being a captain. Tyler is a lot from that Pete regime, but the one thing Tyler hasn't done a lot of in this preseason and training camp is participate. He's been dealing with his injuries and so on. And I get that, and I 100% understand that. But if you're trying to get maybe a new message in and get some buy-in because of Mike McDonald's new voice, and you're trying to advocate that you want this player and he's important, I think DK could be the other captain for the calm down factor, but also because of that energy he does bring to the team with his physicality, how he does. I could see that being maybe the one pivot, because I don't think Tyler would take it too personally if it wasn't given to him, because every indication I've had through this entire training camp is this is Tyler's last year in Seattle. He's not going to be here next year.
Retirement's coming, I think. I don't think he'll leave. I think
he'll retire and he'll go. And I think personally,
well, he's the Seahawks official real estate agent. So anyone that comes in goes straight to his company.
Correct.
He's doing absolutely fine. I think he's settled in Seattle. From my personal point of view, so my coaching point of view, and obviously we'll do this in a future pod as well, Bryce, is when I'm looking at a captain, I want a captain that will encapsulate what I want to bring or what I want my team to bring to the playing field. I think with what Mike Mack wants, he wants that aggressive physical style that is in your face, that is always on the go. I think DK as a offensive captain is right up there. He's got to be. And then that's why I said Witherspoon as well, because I think a couple of more years in the league where he's got more experience and he's actually recognized in the NFL top 100, more than 50. He will be that guy who everyone goes, as a cornerback, nickel or outside, don't mess with him. He commands this defense. I think that's where it's going. I think that's where I really want. I want to see this team be aggressive. I want aggressive leaders. I just want guys that people don't want to mess with. And I think they're two of the guys on either side of the ball that you don't want to mess with.
Yeah, they're tone setters. Yeah. And they're both mouthpieces, whether they're the captain or not. They're both going to be high energy, verbal tone setters, leading by example, regardless of whether they're team captains or not. So you don't necessarily have to pick them as a team captain, but they are definitely sort of vice captain, waiting in the wings, next man up roles, I think, for those two.
This is going to be a very interesting conversation for people in our Discord. If you've not joined, get in there. It's our pin post on X. People that want to comment on this video. The captaincy is always one of those where it depends on your mindset. And as a coach, who knows? But with that said, I will post this as well on our socials. Bryce, obviously, as the co-host of the HawksZone Rundown, do you want to tell all of our viewers and listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, so you can find me and my co-host Ryan on our YouTube channel, HawksZone Rundown. We're both on Twitter. Ryan's under, I believe it's RMac91 is under his, and then mine as well is just at Bryce Coutts. We're constantly posting, retweeting on there, different stuff with the Hawks. We've got our own recap live show coming up in about 35 minutes here on our YouTube channel. So I've been very busy today. So we've got that's coming up today. We'll have Dan Viens from Seahawks Forever on it. We'll have Keith and Bill from the Seahawks Playbook podcast. We're going to do a massive recap of the preseason, season outlook, projection, win totals, and then our own roster projection kind of thing. So,
expect my comments on that then.
Oh,
I'm going nowhere.
Just bring it on, Josh. We'll be ready for it. So, so that's basically what we got coming up, and then we'll have an exciting announcement actually on that show that I can't leak here, but if you tune in there, you'll be able to hear what it is.
We'll be there. I just want to say, like, Bryce, thank you so much. We love having you on this pod. Like, unfortunately, Ryan's not here to counteract yours and Mitch's logic that always undermines everything I say or do. But we have been the 12 Talk podcast with Bryce from the HawksZone Rundown. Bryce will be back on, hopefully with Ryan at some point. Who knows? I'm just going to do the emoji shrug thing. During the season, we will recap a game. Please make sure you like, share this, join our Discord, join everything we do and everything that HawksZone Rundown do, because these guys absolutely smash it. We absolutely love working with those guys. If you want to get in touch with us, if you want to appear on the pod, we have got very limited. Mitch, can you very limited spots now for our game rundowns, haven't we?
Yeah, first half of the season we're pretty much chocker at this point. But later in the season, sort of post bye week, we've got some games available. We haven't actually booked in any post game breakdown with Bryce or Ryan, so maybe one of those later in the season, one of the Arizona games, or maybe the last game of the season would be a really good one. But
nice.
Yeah, we've still got some spots. So if you're interested in coming on, talking Hawks with us, absolutely, we'd love to have you. So just reach out and let us know in the comments, or on the email that's in the description box below on YouTube.
Perfect. So we are the 12 podcast. We are podcast 512, 412, 312. We want you to appear, get in touch. If you've not got in touch, you know.
Your mic went funny when you put the music on, so you sounded like you were talking underwater, which is incredible. What a talent.
Didn't make it sound creepier, I'm not sure. Right. But thank you so much to everyone who's tuned in live. Please, if you are live on here, go and check out Bryce on the HawksZone Rundown with it's a round table, isn't it? So there's you, Dan Viens. Who else say you've got?
Keith and Bill from the Seahawks Playbook podcast.
Awesome.
Nice.
I'll be there in the comments. I'll be watching this. From me, from Bryce, from Mitch, I'm just going to say a massive go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.